Tamim ad-Dari, he explains now. He said, we sailed with 30 men. So this is very important because some people, they say, oh, maybe he was confused. No, it wasn't just him. He sailed with 30 men from the Qabila of Lakhm and Jud'am. These are, again, two Qabail that were in the Sham area. He said, we went out because they used to go out on the oceans. The Arab that were closer to seaports, like the place of Palestine, that's next to the ocean, they would go out. And the Arab that would be more inland would not like the Quraysh, for example, they didn't like to go out and sail in the ocean. They didn't like to go out. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we don't have any hadith of him going out in the boats and so on. The Quraysh, very few of them. But the Arab that lived by Yemen, for example, or the ones that live by Palestine and so on, they like to go out. They would fish, they would go to islands, they would go and trade and so on. So he said, we would go out and 30 men with us on a boat, we went out. And we got lost at sea. The ocean, the waves were high and we got lost to the point that we had no idea where we were. And 30 days we were lost. They went far. 30 days, the whole month, we were lost at sea. Now, exactly where did they go? We don't know. The hadith does not mention. And it's not upon us to guess. Right? This is one thing, again, you see a lot of people on YouTube or TikTok. No, they went to, like one guy's like, they went to the UK. Where did you get that from? Just kind of made it up. Some people say the Bermuda Triangle. We don't know. The hadith doesn't mention, we don't guess at these things. But they said we were lost until we found an island. And because they were at sea, they said they went out so far, it was the ocean water, salty water. So they couldn't drink from it. So they said that the water was salty, so when we saw the island, we hoped that there was fresh water, so we could bring some. So we took a smaller boat and we sent out to the island. And when we got to the island, we saw a daba. Daba here is it's a beast, an animal, a large animal. And interestingly, when I was looking at the hadith, they used the female tense of the Arabic language. And many times it's very interesting when we look at, this is one of the problems why you should stay off like TikTok and these things, because they make these little videos and they show this big man and he's very hairy when they represent this hadith. But that's incorrect. Because they said when we saw this animal, it was very hairy to where we could not tell its front from its back. So it wasn't like a big hairy guy where you could see his face, like, the little animations they made. That's wrong. Rather, they said it was an animal that we had never seen the like of. It was something that we had never seen. It was something unusual. And it was very hairy where we could not tell what it was, but it spoke to us. In words that they understood in the Arabic language. So we said, waylaki. And the ka has a kasra. Interesting. And because daba is the female, is the type of beast. I'm not saying it was a woman either, right? I'm just saying it was an animal. So leave it at that. Ma anti. He said, what are you? So the animal replied, Ana jassasa. Jassasa comes from the word jasus or to spy or to get news. Jassasa here, people have thought as if it's a name, but most likely this is something that he was describing, that he's somebody who collects news for who? For who he's going to talk about. He said, I'm jassasa. And the hadith is famous as the hadith of jassasa. That's what the hadith became famous by. So they said we became afraid of it. It's something that we saw, it's scary. Not something normal, right? So we asked him, what are you? So he said, leave that, go to the man in a monastery. And it's interesting, ad-dayr here in Arabic in the hadith refers to a monastery, right? And this is something very interesting to me personally. Why? Because many people are waiting for the second coming of Jesus alayhi salatu wasalam, of Christ. But many people may confuse who they're looking at, right? And this is somebody who was in a monastery, not in just a house or so on, right? So when the Tamim ad-Dari and them, they heard this, they became afraid. And they said, we thought it was a devil, so we wanted to run from it. So we walked away. But when he told us to go to this monastery, we ran to it because we were afraid of it. So we ran away towards that monastery. He said, in that monastery we saw the biggest man we've ever seen. But it was a man. He was large. But again, we don't want to exaggerate to be like, as if he was like a building or something. No, but amongst humans, he was large. And he was tied up with his hands to his neck, and his legs were bonded. So he could not move with iron chains. And we became afraid from him. So we said, Waylaka, woe to you, who are you? So he said, before that, he said, let me ask you some questions. Now, here, it's a very important part of the hadith. I'm going to mention some of it, but I want to really understand it as well. Here, we see some of the signs of the Day of Judgment that will be described. So, he asked them that there is a place called Baysan. Are there trees there? And we, being from the area of Sham, he said, we knew Baysan. We said, yes, there are trees there. He said, do they bear fruit? We said, yes, of course. He said, soon a time will come that they will be barren, they will be gone, and they will no longer bear fruit. Now, regarding this hadith, when I was studying this particular hadith in Sahih Muslim from one of the shuyukh in Pakistan, he told me that I met people from that area. And I actually Google mapped it as well. And there were a large amount of trees there that are gone today. And those people have confirmed that today, that area, the trees do not bear fruits anymore. Now, this is something that didn't happen in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it has happened in our time. And this is the hadith of Tamim ad-Dari. That the man who's here, we'll mention who he is, and some of you may have already figured it out. He said, this will happen, and that is a sign from the signs that my time will come. That the trees in that area will no longer bear fruit, and they will be scarce, they will be gone. And when they are gone, this is a sign that will come. This didn't happen in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but that prophecy came true. Like the other signs of the Day of Judgment that the Prophet ﷺ has told us. Then he asked about a lake which is called Tabariya here in Hadith. And in the Western books, it looks like, and again, I want to do some more research on this, but I found this very interesting. Galilee area where there is a lake that today, and my Shaykh said this, and then I looked it up on Google Earth, it is at the lowest point in history. It's almost dried up. It used to be a huge lake that had a lot of water. Today, they're expecting in the next few years it will dry up. So here, Dajjal, or the man here, he asked, spoiler alert, he asked, is there a lake there? They said, yes. He said, does it have water? They said, yes, it is filled. He said, a time will come that it will dry up. And that is coming true in our time. 1400 years. Then he asked about a spring of Zughar, and this is a place where it's in South Syria. Now, what I have found is the spring of Zughar that was there in the old maps today is dried up. This is something that was mentioned there as well. And then he asked, has the prophet of the unlettered people come forth? And Tamim ad-Dari, he said, who is that? He told them, is there a man that has come from an Arab people or unlettered, meaning a people that are not sophisticated like the Romans and Persians and so on? Has a prophet come in their time? And here Tamim ad-Dari said that I had heard from that jinn, and this is a different narration, not the one in Sahih Muslim, by the way. And he said, when I had remembered that, I told him, yes, that prophet has come forth. So here the man said, has their people fought him? And he said, yes, the Quraysh, they fought Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said, what are the outcomes of those battles? Sir Tamim ad-Dari said, sometimes they win and sometimes he wins, because in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example, Badr was a clear victory. Uhud was a setback and so on. And even though he explained it's not a loss, but he would go back and forth. So he said that if they were intelligent, like if they want good, they would follow him. Because he is that last prophet. And his coming is one of the signs of me being released. And when I'm released, I will go to every city within 40 days. I will go out the whole world. Now, very interesting. if you think about the time of Sahaba, they could not have imagined that type of travel. Like imagine in their time, you would travel how? Horses, camels, ships. You didn't have cars, you didn't have engines, you didn't have boats, you didn't have any of that. You had no idea of light speed, any of that kind of stuff. So imagine when the Sahaba heard that Dajjal would go around to every city within 40 days, it must have been mind-blowing to them. It was something that could not have been accepted by what they see in front of them. But this is Iman. This is Iman, to believe in the ghaib. And they believed in it. Today we can imagine that. Today, when we look at travel, we're trying to go to Mars, we're trying to look at speed of light, we're trying to, you look at a Concorde, we look at whether the technology is there today or not to actually fulfill that, but we can't understand that, right? We can see how fast travel has become, and who knows how much faster it will become. So it's much easier for us to accept a hadith like that today than then, but the Sahaba accepted it, that was their Iman. And that is why when things like Ya'juj, Ma'juj will come, we shouldn't try to be like, oh, we've Google mapped the world. We haven't. Much of the world we don't know about. And whatever is in the Quran and the Sahih hadith upon us is to accept. Like the Sahaba, when they heard the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the Bedouins would be competing and building tall buildings. They couldn't have imagined that. They didn't understand what a tall building was. At that time, in the barefoot Bedouins, like those that had nothing, how would they be competing in building buildings? Today, when we go to the Gulf and we see Burj Al Arab and Burj Dubai and we see the Khalifa Tower and this and that, today we see that hadith come true in front of our eyes. But we shouldn't at that time have said, well, I don't know, how would that happen? No. If it's in the Quran and Sahih Hadith, we believe in it. And then we see it come true in front of our eyes. As all the signs of the Day of Judgment will come true. Whether we're alive or not to see them is different. But it will come true. And how? We'll find out then. So here, this man then told them, I am Dajjal. I am that Antichrist. And that's very important because some people, because of the weakness of Iman, they're like, Dajjal is a satellite, or Dajjal is the internet, or Dajjal is this. No, it's a person. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam described him. He is a fitna that will come from Allah, from the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a test. And we know this will come. And from this hadith, we know that clearly Sahaba even saw him. Now, how could he be alive all that time ago and so on? Allah willed it. He is a test from Allah, just like how he could bring people back from the dead in front of you, whether it's in the shape of jinn or so on, or show you a Jannah or Jahannam, by the will of Allah. That's a test. So now Tamim al-Dari, and I'll talk about this hadith a little bit more in the next dars, inshallah. But Tamim al-Dari, when he explained this, and he said, we saw this when we were freed, when we got away, we immediately tried to get back to our land. And when we got back, I immediately set out to Medina. He said, this was enough for me with the other signs that Allah had shown me to know this is the messenger of Allah. And he came to Medina with 10 people and they accepted Islam.